Yeah, welcome everyone to my talk about what can university libraries do for the Open Research Knowledge Graph. Thank you very much for the invitation to the Kyoto University Symposium, Scholarly Publications as Open Data and University Libraries. And before I start to talk about how university libraries can support the ORKG, I want to motivate maybe a bit why we need the ORKG and why it's so important to contribute. So you all have maybe listened to the introductory talk about the Open Research Knowledge Graph. What we are basically addressing with the Open Research Knowledge Graph is the flood of publications and organizing this flood of publications, because researchers are drowning in this flood of publications. We have dozens of millions of new publications published every year. And even in very narrow research fields, it's very difficult to keep oversight and navigate through this flood of publications. So we need a new mechanism how to organize scientific knowledge, scientific contributions. And that's exactly what we do with the Open Research Knowledge Graph, where we aim to organize research results in terms of contributions which are made by specific scientific articles for specific research questions, for example, related to climate change, so that you can juxtapose different contributions and see what are the advantages and benefits of different approaches, what are the conclusions, the insights gained from different research studies. So we want to use the metaphor of a research knowledge graph. Basically, a knowledge graph allows to structure, to semantically organize knowledge in a graph structure, so that it's on the one hand machine and on the other hand also human readable, so that both humans and machines can collaborate. If we look a bit on the resources we spend on research and development, we spend globally 1.7 trillion for research and development. So that's an amazing large number of investments into research and development. And you can see on the right-hand side how that breaks down into different countries. You can see that United States and China are the top investors into research and development, and then Japan, also Germany, and many other countries. So a large share of the gross domestic product, often between 2 and 3% in highly developed countries, are invested into research and development. And due to this flood of publications, I think a large share of this money is not very efficiently used and not well invested. I think 20, 30, maybe even 40% of that investment is wasted because we researchers don't have a good overview of the state of the art. We do things, duplicate, we repeat things, and that makes this investments not very efficient and effective. So with the ORKG, we address this challenge. The Open Research Knowledge Graph is an open science, open source, open data, and open knowledge infrastructure. And universities can contribute in a number of ways. University libraries can contribute in a number of ways. So on the one hand, they can help increasing awareness for the Open Research Knowledge Graph. Many researchers, of course, subconsciously understand that this flood of publications is not really helping, and it's not the best way, but they don't have an alternative. And we need to show them that with the Open Research Knowledge Graph, there is an alternative, and there are also other services out there. So in order to showcase and to onboard researchers, we need to create, of course, examples, for example, comparisons for presenting the state of the art for a concrete research problem. And with these examples, we can demonstrate, we can help researchers to organize their research and how they can apply the Open Research Knowledge Graph for their purpose and their domain and their fields. We should help researchers then to create content. Create content in the ORKG means to create the state-of-the-art comparisons, like tabular comparisons of different studies addressing a certain research problem. or literature lists, visualizations, smart reviews. I will show you some of these in a minute. And then once researchers are able to create this content, they can run domain-specific observatories. So for a specific research question, for example, addressing societal challenges like climate change, like COVID-19 pandemic, renewable energy, circular economy, and so on, we can create observatories which organize the research and the knowledge related to this specific challenge. And these observatories then also make the contributions, the curations, the organizations which contribute to this observatory visible. I will show you some examples of these observatories also soon. And we can, of course, also collaborate on integrate the Open Research Knowledge Graph with other research infrastructures, for example, open access repositories, research data management, and so on and so forth. So about the implementing the ORKG in humanities and multilingual environments, this is something we didn't have so much in the focus so far. So currently the coverage of ORKG examples in humanities is still sparse. There are some examples, I will show you some in a minute, but we need much better coverage there. In natural sciences and engineering and life sciences, we have already many nice examples, and you could help us creating such examples in humanities. We think that the ORKG can be a very valuable tool also for humanities, but we need more experimentation there and more of these examples. And then about multilingual environments where English is not the only language or where other languages, non-English languages are used, the ORKG can already be used. So you can create labels in different languages. But we need, of course, better support than English, and that's on our to-do list in our development cycle. And if you have concrete ideas, we will be happy to discuss them with you. Yeah, let's maybe look at some examples. And I'm shifting to my presentation. So you can see here, for example, the list of observatories which we have available already in the ORKG. So the idea of these observatories is organize knowledge in a particular area in a specific domain, and then also acknowledge the libraries, the organizations, the research institutes, and the people who contribute to organizing this. So let's maybe select one of these. We can take the COVID-19 one, which we created as an example. So you have here on the left-hand side a number of research problems which are related to COVID-19, for example. We have the organizations which are involved in curating and supporting this observatory, and we have the members, so individual people who contribute to the creation of content. And then in the lower part, we have like visualizations, figures, we have comparisons, and other ORKG content related to this specific research field or research domain. Of course, such observatories also belong to an area of science. Here in that case, we have it belongs to life sciences, to microbiology, to virology. But in virology, you can have different observatories. For example, this is one for COVID-19, but you could also have one for HIV or many other diseases addressing then particular research challenges in this area. Also, the organizations are important, so we can actually look also at the list of organizations. The aim of the Open Research Knowledge Graph is really to be an open infrastructure, so then all organizations can contribute and will also be acknowledged, and that the content created by these organizations is acknowledged here. So we, for example, have already quite a long list of organizations here contributing to the ORKG, and each of these organizations then can, for example, run some of these observatories and help organizing content in a specific domain. So another example I wanted to show you, another feature, are benchmarks. This is something which is particularly important for computer science. And we can here create benchmarks and overview research related to specific benchmarks. For example, let's select here the benchmark or the area of image classification, which is one task in computer science. And there we have different kind of benchmarks. Benchmarks are basically data sets where different algorithms or approaches can be evaluated on. And one popular seems to be here the flowers benchmark. We can select this one, and we can then get an overview on the research addressing or measuring the algorithms according to this benchmark, and we can see how the different research approaches develop over time, how they perform according to the benchmark, and we can also change the visualization here, for example, neural architectural search, and change the visualization. And on the lower part, we basically see the papers who contribute to this particular benchmark here. So that's one example which I wanted to show you. Another example are literature lists. So if you go to the View tab and then you see literature lists, so that's a new feature which we just released a few weeks ago. We can create as an easy entry for researchers these kind of literature lists. So a literature list is an organized list of bibliographic references. So we have here a title, for example, here in that case, the title is Production and Use of Videos in Requirements Engineering. We have a section with some background information. And then we have different sections, like the one production and use of videos for requirements elicitation. And then we have a list of references here. So this can be a long list. But we can also then have different sections. For example, the next section is production and use of videos for requirements validation. And again, we have a list here. And a third section on production and use of videos for requirements documentation. And now I could select also from this, we can see also who contributed to this literature list. So here, Oliver Karas contributed 57%, Kia Edina Fafa 23%, and some other contributors. And we can also then use such a literature list to create a comparison of the state of the art. So you can select here, for example, several of these publications, and then start a comparison, basically, where you describe these studies, these publications in more detail, and create such a more comprehensive semantic descriptions of the contributions here. That's another feature. Another feature I wanted to show you are smart reviews. So you can also reach them via the View and Smart Reviews tab. Smart reviews are basically like review or overview articles, giving an overview of the state of the art by including several of these comparisons. So they are like real articles. So we have also different sections, like here an introduction section, an overview of scholarly identifier systems. And then we have sections which basically are created by integrating comparisons of the state of the art, like this one here, where we have a comparison of scholarly identifier systems. And this comparison is directly integrated from the Open Research Knowledge Graph. And once the Open Research Knowledge Graph updates, also this comparison will update. And then we have an ontology basically for this comparison. Basically, we describe the properties here and have a description of these properties. And we can have another section on bibliographic scholarly knowledge graphs, for example, with an introductory text, and then again a comparison and an ontology section, and so on and so forth. So you can actually write real survey and review articles directly on the ORKG. So when you click the download button, actually you can generate also a PDF document, you can export it, and you can directly edit it online. So once you are logged in the Open Research Knowledge Graph, we can actually click the edit button and then directly edit these smart reviews online in the Open Research Knowledge Graph. You can double click in the different sections You can add new sections here with this plus bar. We have different types of sections like textual content, comparisons, visualizations, resources, properties, or ontologies. And then inside the sections, you can click and you can use Markdown and directly edit the content in these kind of sections. You can also then include references here. So you can either use BibTeX references or even DOIs directly, and we will create the corresponding references inside for you there. And on the right-hand side, you see the section type. So here that's a text section. Here we have a comparison section, below an ontology section. So this is another feature which we recently added to the Open Research Node Graph, and which we now want to use especially for integrating the Open Research Node Graph with publishing platforms, with open access publishing platforms to integrate the ORKG also with traditional workflows, scientific workflows. Let's now maybe look at some examples of comparisons, especially in social sciences and humanities. So a colleague of us, for example, created this overview comparison on attitudes towards ICT in the PISA studies of 2015 and 2018. So she organized here the content from different studies which were done on the PISA data sets, especially with regard to ICT attitudes in these PISA studies. And we have here a large number of these studies and correspondingly described the contribution, the gist of the contribution in such a comparison. And this can be used then to create a dashboard and an overview. On the one hand, we have here this tabular overview, but we created here a domain-specific overview, which makes it even more intuitive to get an overview, for example, indicating this on a map and showing how many studies target a particular country here. Or below, we can select specific countries for specific areas and basically filter the list of studies. And we can then also see here the positive relationships according to the number of studies, negative relationships or attitudes from these studies, and have such a domain-specific visualization basically here for these different studies. And then there's also a faceted browsing where you can also select different of these attributes from the studies and then see the concrete studies there. So this is one example which is created using the ORKG API. So we have an application programming interface where you can program and develop applications on top of the ORKG in Jupyter notebooks, in Python. This is one example of this. And then let's maybe look at some other examples. So here we have a comparison of mixed languages in Belarus. So there's also social sciences, linguistics, I suppose, where we have different studies and then a description of these different studies, like the methods which were used in these studies, the population which was analyzed, the regional coverage here, for example, in Minsk, in Belarus overall, or also the sample sizes and the conclusions of the author. So that's another example of a visualization comparison in linguistics. There is also one here in social and behavioral sciences, a comparison on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on well-being. There were different studies which we can see here. And this comparison basically gives an overview on these different studies, overall 21, and describes basically the content of these different studies in terms of which part of the population was addressed, the subgroups, for example, the second one here, particularly addressing women, then the data which was used, either own surveyed or other data, the geographical coverage, the temporal coverage, and so on and so forth. And this allows like a nice comparison of these different social science studies here related to well-being in the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's another example comparing the gender structure of parliamentary elites in 3 countries. This is a relatively small comparison. Or we have here a comparison of a collection of libraries or third places. There are different studies and they discuss different conclusions, methods, research problems, institutions, materials which are used, results, sample sizes again, physical space size of the libraries. And again, this gives an overview on these different studies related to these different attributes and properties. So these are just some examples of comparisons in social science and humanities. But as I said, we need more of these examples and need to demonstrate in a better way how it can be used for different use cases in social sciences and humanities. What about future development and deployment? So we have a long-term research and development agenda with the ORKG. We have the resources and funding to work in the next decade with a sizable team on the ORKG. But of course, we want to do this together with a lot of partners around the world. So it would be great if we could collaborate with you. We envision to onboard 10,000 of users in the next years. So hopefully or ideally, the ORKG will be used by most of the researchers at some point in time, like Wikipedia is used by many internet searchers or people using the internet as an information source. We want to make the ORKG a knowledge graph for research, which is used by almost all researchers in the future. And of course, we need to develop a lot of features. So planned features include, for example, more automation, better use of NLP, AI, machine learning, where we combine really human and machine intelligence. Unfortunately, it will not be possible to populate the knowledge graph in a completely automated fashion. So we really have to intertwine human curation with machine learning and artificial intelligence approaches to support humans. And the more training data we have, the more maybe AI can take over. But so far, the training data is not yet sufficient to really populate the knowledge graph. We also want to work on better discussion features for researchers, on notifications and updates so that you get notified when new research to your area of interest appears in the open research knowledge graph. We want to integrate it with social networks. I already mentioned also the integration with other publication and research infrastructures like open access repositories, research data management, and so on. And we also want to better facilitate the embedding of content in personal and organizational websites so that you can use the ORKG as a content management system, but you can embed the content then in your own environment and export it. We already allow export to LaTeX, to CSV, to Word, to a lot of different formats, but we want to improve on that even further. Yeah, with this, I would like to conclude my talk. So we have a sizable team. We will hire also more people in the next year. So here you see some of the people involved in developing the ORKG. We have a number of software engineers, doctoral researchers, postdocs who work on ORKG related topics. And as a conclusion, I think we need to really reinvent scholarly communication. Knowledge graphs are perfectly suited to capture research contributions in a structured and semantic way, making them human and machine interpretable. With our Open Research Knowledge Graph initiative, we aim to establish a registry for research contributions, and we need to synergistically combine human, expert, and machine intelligence, and that's still also a research challenge we are working on. So please stay tuned so you can always use and get involved with the ORKG. We have a mailing list, a forum, a Skype chat also, and a lot of documentation already available. Thank you very much for your attention and feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you very much.